from the 2 cents short of a dollar, the show where we give our 2 cents and keep it 100. We're your host. That's Mo Tiz, and I'm Rude in the boxing world today. What I want to talk about is the welterweight division. There's some controversy between Brian Norman Jr. and Jaron Boots Ennis. Allegedly, they were supposed to fight, but the fight may be off the table. Bozy Ennis recently dropped an interview saying, listen, dude is pricing himself out. I kind of personally hate when dudes start throwing the numbers around. You know what I'm saying? If you tell me he's pricing himself out, that's good enough. But I didn't really like when Bozy was like, yeah, the most he's made is 100K. You know what I'm saying? Like, leave it. I think it's fair to say what the person's asking for and let us imagine. But I don't think it's cool to put his business out that, yo, this is the most he's made. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because now I think that could potentially mess up his bargaining for other things, right? Like if 100K is the most he's made, but let's say that's not necessarily public knowledge. Let's say, okay, if he's asking for the 2 million Bozy said he's asking for, right? But let's say that fight falls through and he goes to, negotiate with someone else. Maybe he wants to ask for 500,000, right? But I feel like people are going to keep going back to that 100K and thinking, okay, maybe I can give him 250, 3. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like I know that I kind of went on a side tangent there, but just personally, I really don't like when people throw the numbers out. But yeah, but back on the main course, what do you make of Bozy's interview? What do you make of this potential fight between Boots Ennis and Norman Jr.?
So I think there's been a lot of back and forth. I would definitely say Brian Norman Sr. for sure has been on the internet just with interviews. And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because Brian Norman Sr. also been throwing out numbers just in his interviews. So I get that part. A part of me likes it because it is transparent. Like we can get context as to whether or not, someone is ducking or someone's being unreasonable instead of using the common vague language of, this is more than your last fight, but how much? I don't know. You know what I mean? So we kind of out in the wind. We can't analyze it. But with the numbers being thrown out there, there's transparency there. You know what I mean? I think the only thing I kind of agree with you on is the fact that it's not consistent. If it was transparency across the board with all boxes, then I'm all for it. But then now, if it's not, it's going to be one of those tactics that can be used, and now they can weaponize it to their own advantage, right? And it can be weaponized on both ends. But I heard Eddie Hearn actually did an interview also. He threw out numbers in terms of what they offered Brian Norman Jr., which was, I think it was like 750K. Then it went back. They upped it to $1 million. Then they upped it to like 125 mil. Then they upped it all the way to 1.75 mil. And apparently Brian Norman Jr. and Sr. declined it. So with that being said, and just given all the information that I've received on the situation and what I know, not saying Brian Norman Jr. is scared of Boots. I don't think so. I think he's willing to fight him. I think they're pricing themselves out. It's pretty obvious at this point that they're looking to get as much money as possible because they know in all likelihood they will lose this fight against Jaron Ennis.
Yeah, there's an inherent danger there, right? Once you start keep pushing those numbers forward, like, nah, I need this much to take this fight. There's a danger. Yeah. And you're like, yo, if I put myself in that risk, I need to be compensated for that.
Absolutely. Right. And I know we talked about this in one of our old videos, but for me, it goes back down to, and I know we disagree, but for me, I think if you're calling out another fighter and you're challenging them, I think if the onus is on you to make the fight happen. You know what I mean? Because in this case, I don't think it falls on Jaron. I think, Jaron, they're doing what they can to make the fight happen. But I think at this point, Brian Norman Jr. is up to you to make the fight happen. That's how I see it. So in this case, I think low key, if anyone's ducking in this situation, it would be Brian Norman.
Yeah, I can see that. And, I don't have the sanctioning body rankings in front of me. I did quickly look, and I know Brian Norman is ranked number 6 on ESPN. Take that with a grain of salt, but he's ranked amongst welterweight. So, it's definitely someone in the top 10, right? So it's a good fight. It's a good opportunity for Norman. If he knocks off Boots, then he is that guy at welterweight. You know what I'm saying? But fair, Jaron Boots Ennis is going to find himself in the 130-pound Lomachenko situation where it's like, it's very hard to unify these belts and get notable names to fight me because I'm just that good, right? and then it's going to force him to maybe sooner than he wants to move up to 54 if you want some challenges, if you want some good fights, some good opportunities. Because right now, I look at the landscape of 147, and I don't really see anyone that can challenge him. I think the best name out there probably is Monte Stanionis, asterisk next to Conor Ben. You know what I mean? But
Mario's Barrios.
I think he'll kill Vargas, bro. My honest
but
opinion.
but he would be like amongst the fray that
Yeah,
champions that could like,
yeah.
you know,
He's in that group. But I'm just thinking who poses the most of a challenge. I think Stanionis has a decent kind of sturdy chin. He can entice Boots to fight on the inside, but Stanionis can fight on the inside as well. And if Jaron gets comfortable on the inside like he did in that last fight versus Avanesian, I do think Stanionis can land some big shots on him, right? It was a point in the Stanionis fight where I'm just like, all right, bro, you got to box a little bit. Like, get out of there. You know what I'm saying? Don't just stand in there. But you can tell he felt comfortable. He did not fear the power because in the Roman Villa fight, he was moving. There's a lot of head movement, a lot of utilization of his feet. He wasn't just standing in there like, all right, let me take these shots to give one back. You know what I'm saying? So he knows what he's doing in there. So with the Stanionis fight, I'm not sure he would stay in there, but by chance that he does, I think Stanionis is kind of sturdy, going to throw those punches back. So I think Stanionis is probably the biggest threat at 147. Not saying I think Stanionis can beat him, but Brian Norman, I think it's kind of clear who the favorite will be in that fight. I don't see many people picking Norman to pull that upset off. You know what I mean? Not saying
yeah,
he's not a good fighter, but there's levels.
yeah. I agree. I agree. And this situation is unfortunate because this is a perfect example of when knowing your worth can be a detriment to a situation that can benefit everyone, right? And nowadays, especially in American culture, there is this idea of knowing your worth where people overshoot their worth. When the idea of knowing your worth is understanding where you're at in the universe, not shooting over, you know. And I think this is the perfect example of that. And it's unfortunate because it's like, come on, like, you know, for you to go from making where you were making, yeah, you're getting a bonus. You're getting paid significantly more. I get it. You know, you want to make as much money as possible, but does that make it right? You know, and I think that's just kind of like, come on, like
Yeah,
deep down, y'all know y'all gonna lose, you know, or
yeah,
y'all know it's a strong possibility, and that's what the situation is. And it's like, come on, it's blatant, you know. I don't think you could even argue against that at this point, right? It's kind of like,
yeah.
and I think that's what ruins boxing. If I'm being honest, I think that's what ruins boxing.
Let me ask you this question, right? So we see Norman, right? And we're just gonna say, hey, right now it looks like he may be pricing himself out. There's an inherent risk there. He's like, I have to be compensated if I'm gonna take this risk, right? You got a guy like Barrios. Barrios, you know, has that defeat to Javante. He has the loss to Keith Thurman. He lost both those fights pretty badly. Comes back, beats Ugas, right? Who, I mean, Ugas had his best win against Pacquiao, got beat up by Errol Spence, but you know, beats Ugas. I think Barrios may have been elevated to a champion now, right? And I
Mhm.
know his name is in the mix to unify with Blue Tennis. His name is up there. He could potentially get a Pacquiao fight, huge payday. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think it is about where I'm going with this is a guy like Barrios has brought himself back to relevancy after two losses. I think he's a champion. I have to verify that he may have been elevated one of the belts that Terrence relinquished, but he may or may not be. Fact checking you on that one. But then he's in the running for like potentially a Pacquiao fight, huge payday. So he's built back up his relevancy after the losses. But I feel like common amongst a lot of black fighters, they're very scared to put it on the line and potentially take that first loss. So what do you think it is where Barrios is Mexican, correct?
Yes.
That a Mexican fighter can go out and take a loss and say, I don't care, I'm gonna get back. Where it seems like a lot of the black fighters are very nervous to put themselves in that situation, maybe a fear that they won't get back to an elevated level of relevancy. What do you think causes that?
I don't know. That's a good point because I didn't think about it in terms of the racial aspect to that, to the culture of losing. And I'm trying to think of some Mexican fighters. I don't know if it's because usually the Mexican fighters are losing more than the black fighters, and usually the black fighters in recent times are kind of projected higher from the marketing standpoint. Like if you start looking, like the best fighters are generally the black fighters, at least up until recently, right? Because now you got Usyk, you got Inoue, but you got fighters like Jaron, you got fighters like Terrence Crawford, you got Javante Tank Davis, you know.
Even a guy like Canelo who's been able to come back from 2 losses and still be like the face of.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a black fighter that had 2 losses, a couple losses, and came back as of recent times. We will have to wait to see what happens with Devin Haney. But
But I would never consider this guy like a box office name. I know Jamel took that loss
oh
to
yeah,
Floyd
Jamel's a good
Madison,
one.
undisputed, but
He had a
it's
draw, and he still came back in. And I don't think that had really an impact. I think it really depends on how large of a star you are.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the times, like Mario Barrios, he wasn't like a big major star. Like his first, when he lost to Javante, he wasn't like just as a big of a name as Javante, right? If anything, that loss elevated him. And I think the same with Pitbull Cruz. That loss kind of elevated him. And then when he fought Floyd Mayweather, that loss kind of elevated him. And
Yeah,
I think with the black fighters, when they're fighting, their name is already kind of cemented to a degree. So like them losing, it kind of drops them to a degree based off the expectations.
but a guy like Brian Norman right now, name is probably where Barrios' name was at, where it's like I knew him, but I'm not viewing him as one of those guys. But he seems like he may have, maybe just from the outside looking in, they may have that mentality like, yo, we can't afford to take that loss right now. You know what I'm saying?
And the crazy part is, I feel like if Brian Norman Jr. goes in and fights Jaron Ennis and it goes the distance, and he gives him a tough fight, his name is going to be elevated.
It's gonna
That's
be
a
like that.
fact.
But
That is an absolute fact. So it's
Mhm.
crazy to me that they really thinking like, yo, we might, I don't know, maybe their mentality is like, yo, he might go and damage us, break us in half, and then we can't, we got to have our faculties and I don't know, but I feel
Yeah,
like he go in there and give a good fight, his name is going to be elevated for a fact,
yeah.
you
Me,
know?
me, me personally, I think a lot of black fighters idolize Floyd Mayweather. And I think, like, just thinking, like, oh, I can do potentially what Floyd did. Like, Floyd, in my personal opinion, is an anomaly, right? And I'm not talking about the 50 and all, I'm talking about how much money he made in the sport of boxing, right? So I think guys are trying to tie it directly together. If I stay undefeated, I'm going to make more money. When, obviously, if you go out there and fight some tough fights, if you go fight Boots Ennis, like, you're probably going to get paid more than if you fight somebody we never heard of but keep that undefeated record. You know what I'm saying? But I think a lot of guys are tying, oh, Floyd made this much money because he's undefeated. Floyd stayed undefeated, but he marketed himself well. He took chance and fought Oscar De La Hoya, who was the golden boy, right? But then Floyd turned himself into this villain. People wanted to tune in because they wanted to see so. Because Floyd on the microphone, bro, dude was undefeated until he like ran into Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor schooling him on the mic, but you know what I'm saying? So I think guys got to separate the two, because I don't think it's that you can't come back from a loss, but I think it starts to become mental. Like, do you believe you can come back from a loss? Do you think it's quiet after that loss? You know what I'm saying? I just kind of wish guys would disconnect themselves from that, where it's like, yo, if I lose, it's over. And, just to be completely honest, I just like I see it most amongst the black fighters.
Yeah, yeah. And
Losses, bro, and regarded as one of the greatest ever.
yeah, I want to see it. I have to wait and see because I feel like Errol Spence, if he goes and start fighting, he's gonna sell. Like that
Yeah,
last loss against Terrence Crawford, he's still gonna sell. He's gonna sell more
Errol
compared
could
to
do a
most people.
lot to debunk this notion, and I hope he does. You know what I'm saying? Because I want these guys to just go out there and fight. Like, don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? And if you're as good as you think you are, maybe you don't even get the loss. You know what I'm saying?
That's a fact. But like you said, Errol might just be an outlier, and generally, I would
Yeah.
probably now I'm thinking about it, and I can't even. You might be right. I'll probably have to go and do some research, but you might be right. You might have a case here. I'm not gonna lie.
But with that being said, make sure you guys jump in the comment section. Do you want to see this fight? Brian Norman Jr. versus Boots Ennis? Do you want to see Brian Norman Sr. versus Posey Ennis? You know what I'm saying? Like, jump in the comment section, tell us what you want to see, how you expect that fight to go. Does Boots have any real competition at the welterweight division, or is he going to be forced to move up sooner than he wants to? 2 cents short of a dollar. Like, subscribe, keep them comments rolling in. More videos coming soon.